Hey there again, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good morning.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know, you're all thinking, it's not going to be so good in about 4 hours when the Vikings win. That's the way it is. I really hope Rodgers stays healthy, though, everybody. I do hope that. Because I like beating you guys when Rodgers is healthy. So, it's nice to see Eric. I was looking at that, I'm like, man, he's like 40 plus years old wearing a Star Wars shirt. He's a cool guy. So today I am going to be talking about something, I'm calling it Better Together. And you probably have kind of an idea of what that's going to, a little bit what that's going to mean maybe. It's about relationships, obviously, to a degree at least. I think that we all kind of fall into one of two brackets. We fall into a bracket of, man, I just like to be around people all the time and I can't get enough of it. Or, I really don't need to be around people ever. I tended to kind of fall into the range of loner when I was growing up. I know it's shocking because it seems so awesome and friendly. No. I just didn't like the thought of inviting a kid over to my house and like I gotta like entertain him. Ugh. Like I gotta be nice to another human being for multiple hours. This is tough. Some of us, we're okay. We like to be alone a little bit more, and I tend to be in that range. But I will say this: then there comes a day where that seems okay, but then you actually get a certain kind of a relationship, and things change. You know, I was fine when I was single. I thought it was all good, and then I fell in love with Crystal, and that changed. And then it was like the time that she decided to break up with me. I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. And we once we see what relationship looks like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's something to that. You know, as a person growing in my faith, I always was just like, okay, I can read my Bible, I can pray, I can go to church, I can do all that stuff, and I'll be fine. And that was good until I kind of gained a group of friends where we would just naturally, kind of organically talk about stuff. And all of a sudden I started to see that my faith was growing. And I think that theirs was too. And something just changes. I do remember, and I'll be honest, I think it was just last Sunday, I told Eric, I'm like, man, I feel like the older I get, the less I need friends. How many of you have ever actually kind of thought that? Like, I'm getting older, I'm the only awful person. Okay.
No, no, we're just not honest.
You're just not honest, that's what I like. And I think at some point, most of us, even extroverts, I think, like, that need to be around people, that there's kind of that sense as we get older, and I think part of it might be healthy. Part of it might be the thing of like, I don't feel like I have to be around people in order to have my self-worth, better. I got kids in the youth group all the time, like, Kellen, what are we doing on Wednesday night? Who's gonna be there? I'm like, I don't care who's gonna be there. You better be. Like, I don't care if your friends are gonna be here or not. Come. But we have this thing in us where either we're probably a loner or we probably love to be around people. But here's the thing. I believe that being alone is not the best thing for any of us. You know, do we tend to steer towards less relational connection simply because we're too lazy to go after something more? So this morning I want us to go back to the book of Judges in the Old Testament. And there's this guy in the book of Judges named Gideon. And you've all heard stories about Gideon. But this part of the story about Gideon, I think it fits in really well with what we're talking about relationships. Gideon was one of these guys that we call a judge. Back in his time in the book of Judges, there were no kings in the nation of Israel, and they were all kind of led at different times by a certain man or woman who was just awesome, usually, and they were leaders, and they were called judges. And Gideon became one of those kinds of people. But what happened is, just before Gideon comes into the picture, for 40 years, the Israelites had lived in peace. But God had said to them, you need to obey me, you need to not follow the gods of the Amorites, and then you're going to continue to have peace. And what do you think the Israelites did? They did what the Israelites kind of tended to do. Follow God and then don't follow God. Well, they started to follow these other gods. And after these 40 years of peace, there was 7 years where they were being ransacked by nations from the east, the Midianites. And what would happen is, man, they would come and they would raid the areas, especially the farms that these Israelites had. And so everything that the Israelites had was just ransacked. It didn't matter if it was cattle, sheep, the actual crops. Everything would get taken by these Midianites. And so it was a tough time to be an Israelite. And we read this in Judges 6:5. It says, these nations, these eastern nations, came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land and they ravaged it. So you're a farmer in Israel at this time, and you're looking over your shoulder all the time. You go out and you plant your crops, and you're just hoping, man, I hope I get to have these crops. And you go out and you're harvesting the crops, and the whole time you're looking over your shoulder at when are the Midianites coming? When are they going to take all my stuff? And it kept happening over and over and over and over again. And so when we meet Gideon in the book of Judges, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He is threshing his wheat. He's taking care of his crops. But it's where we find him that's kind of interesting. It says in Judges 6:11, the angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. Now just keep it up there for a little bit, that verse. If you're reading that verse right now, there's probably, most of us were like, nothing weird about that verse. No big deal. But if you were a farmer in Israel, in the Middle East, way back in this time, you're looking at that verse and you're going, oh, there's something wrong. See, Gideon had he'd been overcome with fear. Overcome with fear that he was all his crops were going to be taken by these Midianites. And so he was in the place threshing wheat where he was not supposed to be threshing wheat. Let me tell you real quick about what threshing wheat looks like. What they would do is they would take their stalks of wheat and they would just put it out on the ground, and they would take this thing that looks a little bit like big nunchucks. I still say, man, I've had a habit all my life saying nunchucks with an M, and I found out looking up the word, it's nunchucks. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that until this week. So nunchucks. They look like big nunchucks, and it's called a flail, and they would take it and they would just beat the stalk over and over and over again. They beat the stalks over and over again. And what would happen is that there was this thing called chaff and the grain that would fall off the stalks, and they would have then just this straw left over on top. So you could take the straw, you could just get rid of it, and it was all good. And so now you had just this chaff and grain sitting on the ground. And what's annoying about the chaff is, from what I gather, is it's tough to just like by hand get it away from the grain. It's kind of like pet hair on a car, like a carpet or on a car chair or something like that. Like you can't get it off except with tape. Okay, this chaff was just tough. But what was awesome is it was really easy if all you needed to do was you could throw it up in the air, and the chaff is so light that the wind would just blow the chaff away, and then the grain would fall to the ground. And so that's what you would do. You take all that stuff, throw it up in the air, and the job was done for you. But Gideon was in the wrong place. Gideon was in a wine press. I'm going to show you the difference between what a threshing floor and a wine press looks like. Here, the first one here, this is a threshing floor. So this is where they would do all this threshing of the wheat, and then they would just throw it up, and the wind, see, there's tons of area around there for the wind to take that chaff and just blow it away. But then this is a wine press. This is the place where we see Gideon. This is where we find him. He's down in a cellar. And some of these wine presses, actually, they would be covered. He is so terrified of being seen out in the open that he digs into this thing to try and do something. It is impossible for him to thresh wheat in that place. All Gideon would have had to do was go out in the open, go on that threshing floor, take a couple minutes, do his thing, and he'd have been done. But he was terrified. Here's the thing. Sometimes we do things and we get alone thinking that it's the safe thing. And it might be safe, but it's not the effective thing. That's what it was like here for Gideon. He wanted to get alone, be away where he couldn't be seen, and it was safe. Those Midianites, they weren't going to get him. But it wasn't effective. And I think our story reminds me a lot of Gideon's story. I think there's a lot of times where I end up finding myself in the wrong place altogether. We all too often find ourselves alone rather than out in the open where purpose and fulfillment awaits us. Just a few weeks ago, I had a situation where I had a couple buddies. Last week, they actually did the Ironman in Madison. And that's just stupid to do. I don't know if you know what the Ironman is, like 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of biking, and a marathon. Done. Okay? And here, I would do the biking and the running, but you put me in that water, I'll just give up right away and drown. Like, that's just a long ways to swim. So here's what happens. My buddies, like 3 weeks ago maybe, they're like, hey, we need to ride a slow 50-mile ride. Why don't you come and ride with us? And they live in Waukesha. And so I was like, yeah, sweet, awesome. And thinking that I'll be close to Milwaukee, I've got a friend, Marcus. He's a kid that went through my youth group, and just a really cool kid. And I was like, maybe I can get lunch with him. So I give him a call, or text, whatever. We text, I guess. And we make a date, not a date, an appointment, to have lunch together. And so the next day comes, and it is a downpour. Absolutely raining like crazy. And if you've ever ridden on a road bike, you don't do that in the rain, because those tires are like this, okay? So we weren't going to go. I had a bunch of painting I needed to do in my house. I've needed to do it for like 2 years. The first 3 weeks that I moved here, I did a ton of painting in my house. And there was a couple things that needed to be done still, and I waited 2 years. And so I was like, I'm going to take the opportunity while it's raining, I'm going to do this. So I text Marcus and I say, hey buddy, I'm not going to Milwaukee, so I'm not going to go there for lunch. If you want to come hang out with the family, I'll take you out for lunch or whatever and come hang out. Not thinking, he's like 24, he's not going to. I get a text from him a couple minutes later, and he's like, hey, I'm on the road, I'll see you in a little bit. And I'm going to be honest with you, there was a part of me that when I got that text, my shoulders kind of slumped. Because I had gotten into my introverted wonderland. Okay? I used to paint growing up to make money in the summers, and I love painting, and it relaxes me. And then putting earphones in my ear and listening to a book on Audible or listening to a podcast, I'm like, this is my place. Okay? It's better than getting in like a hot tub or something. It's awesome. And so when he said he was coming, I'm like, oh. Here's the thing. My attitude with that, it actually, man, I could have missed an incredibly awesome day. Here's what happened. Like, he comes and he actually told me about he's going to be going to the Army in a month. It was awesome to talk with him about that. We went to Red Robin and got my favorite hamburger. That was great. Then we went out disc golfing. I hadn't beaten this kid in like the last 6 times we disc golfed. And I beat him. It was so awesome. And here's the thing. What you need to understand is this kid's the best athlete that ever went through my high school. He won state in the 400-meter dash, was second in the 200-meter dash, went to UW Milwaukee, tons of conference championships. The kid's an athlete. So when I beat him in anything competitive, I'm like, boom. Love it. And I brag about it, and I don't even care. I had a 150-foot shot at one point, and I did a tomahawk, and it went right into the cup. It was awesome. And that was like, that's where I sealed it, and he was crushed from then. It was so fun to watch. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, we actually got to talk. It wasn't a long talk, it was like 10 minutes, but I got to talk with him about where he's actually at in his faith. I got to talk with him about things that actually mattered. Things that have been on my heart to talk with this kid about for a long time. In that moment, I realized something. I was reminded that I may be able to do all kinds of things that give me a lot of pleasure and make me comfortable, but the things that matter are real connections with real people. That's always going to be the thing that matters more than anything else. We need to step out of the safety of our underground wine press, and we need to begin to open ourselves up to the dangers and to the beauty of the people around us. See, we know that people are dangerous, but people are also beautiful. And open ourselves up to those relationships is a thing that we've got to do. But I think we find 2 main reasons why we don't open ourselves up to people. The first reason is fear. That's what we saw with Gideon. The second reason, though, I think is comfort. We just like to be comfortable. With Gideon, you know, he was just scared. And we get that way with relationships. We fear acceptance. But then when we actually get accepted by somebody, we fear that one day we're going to do something stupid and we're going to lose that acceptance, and now we're going to be hurt even worse. And so what we do is we kind of hunker down in these holes in the ground, and we let the army of people pass us by overhead because we're scared. Even for people who are extroverts, who are always around people, even people in those situations, it's rare that we let people really in to where we're at. Or else we hide away because it's the comfortable thing. And I think even hiding away because it's the comfortable thing, I think can be a thing of fear sometimes. Like we're afraid to get out of our comfort zone. You know, if you hide away from people because it's the comfortable thing for you to be alone, I want to challenge you. to something. And this is something that I have to think through sometimes too. I like running. I know you guys think I'm stupid for it, and I agree, okay? My knees are probably going to be shot one day, all that. Okay, fine, whatever. At least, you know, I'm okay right now. But when I run, there's this comfort zone that I can get into. And when I coach a kid in cross-country or track, I've done this before, and I'll be running with a kid. He's running really, really slow. Like, barely going along. To the point where, like, I just kind of stop and I'm walking next to him, like, you know. And what I say to the kid in this situation is I go, you know what? You would get a lot more comfortable if you would speed up a little bit. See, it's this hidden thing in us that we think that the slower we run, I'm going to get more and more comfortable. But there's this weird thing with our body that we actually get to a point where we're running too slow and we get less comfortable. If we're running too fast, obviously we get uncomfortable. But there's this sweet spot somewhere in there. And some of you are like, I never felt that sweet spot. There, it is there. Okay, go out and figure it out and you'll get to that sweet spot at some point. And I think we're like that with relationships. We have this comfort spot of like, I just like being alone. I like being alone. I don't need it. And we think that's the best thing for us. But if we would just step out of that for a little bit to work on some relationships that are give and take, all of a sudden we're going to find ourselves realizing that back there where we had nobody, that wasn't the comfort place. The comfort place is here now. We have to figure out where that comfort place is, that there is a spot for us. And that comfort is worth the discomfort of the time and energy that it takes to obtain it. Whatever our reasons for hiding away from people, God is saying in Scripture, it's a scriptural thing, we need to be around people. First thing is, we need a place. You need a place where you are known. You have to have a place in life where you're known. You have to have a place where you get out of the darkness and out of that cellar where you're now in the light and somebody knows you enough to be able to be with you in life. This is a place where we break free from our fear. You see, Gideon lived in fear. And his fear was so debilitating that even when God called him out of that cellar, he didn't want to go out of that cellar. Gideon did not want to be known, even by God. Judges 6:14 and 15 says, God says to Gideon, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? And Gideon replies, pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. See, Gideon was embarrassed. Gideon was ashamed. Gideon did not want God to know who he really was, which is funny because obviously God knows who we really are. And that's the thing. God knew exactly who Gideon was. God knew exactly everything about Gideon that made Gideon feel like he was a nothing. And God still said, you're good enough for what I'm calling you to do. I don't think that we're anything different from Gideon. Jesus says to us, I know who you are, and I like it. Okay, there's some things I want to fix, but I like it for the most part. I like it enough that I went to the cross and I died for you. Being known by God is never a bad thing. And I think we have to challenge ourselves to the understanding that sometimes being known by another person, somebody that we can learn to trust, that they care about us enough to see the warts and be okay, being known by somebody is not the worst thing. Gideon never could have become a useful tool for God without stepping out and risking being seen. When you're willing to step out of your comfort zone or that fear and let somebody know you, what happens is you actually open the door for God to do something in your life that couldn't have happened if you had stayed in the cellar. There is very, very little empowerment in the life. I've got my phone ringing. That's never happened before to me while I'm preaching. One of you guys did that, Jason. I just put it aside. There is very little empowerment in the life of a believer who lives in isolation. I want you to get that. There is little empowerment in our lives if we are living in isolation. Empowerment comes when we are living life with people. Life happens in the presence of other people. Matthew 18:20 says, for where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. Now here's the thing. This is a verse that we as Christians love to talk about. It makes us feel good. And I think part of what it is we have this misunderstanding like, yeah, when I'm just alone in my room with God, he's not really there like he is when I'm with. That's not what it's saying. God is with us when we're by ourselves. But this is a thing that's talking about the authority of God. God has an authority in our hearts that's stronger when we're in the midst of other people. The reason is is because I can be in a room praying to God, and God can speak to me, and I can let those ideas and those thoughts bounce around in my head, and when I don't talk it out with somebody else, when somebody else isn't there helping me through it, it's easier for me to go the way of disobedience to what God is saying. But when 2 or 3 gather together and agree or disagree together, we challenge each other to actually follow the authority of God that He's put in our lives. See, Gideon he needed the wind to blow away the chaff from the grain. But when he was in isolation, that wind wasn't there. Our friends, our people that are trying to follow after Jesus like us, become like the wind that blows away the chaff. They help to blow away kind of the silly ideas or the misconceptions that we have of what God is calling us to do. We need a small group of friends that helps us live in submission to God's authority in our lives. Another reason that we need a small group is that you need a place where you're not focused just on yourself. That's part of the beauty of small groups, being with other people. Is it's not just about you anymore. See, real purpose happens when you're not alone. It happens in the times where we're selfless. Real purpose happens when we break free from our own personal comfort. Gideon didn't care about other people very much when he was living in that cellar, when he was threshing meat in that cellar. He was focused on himself. When we're comfortable, great things don't happen. Great things don't happen when people stay comfortable. People weren't sent to the moon because people were comfortable in just staying here on earth. They got out of their comfort zone. They did something crazy. That's what happens when we team up with other people. Gideon never would have gotten rid of the enemies of the Israelites. He never would have given freedom to the Israelites had he not gotten out of his comfort zone. And here's what I want you to understand. You may think that you're completely fine on your own today. You may think that you don't need other people. As long as you're working hard to just kind of live that moral life that you're trying to live and follow God, that you're okay. But here's what I want to say. It's not just about you. I actually think we live in disobedience when we don't live in connection with other people because it becomes all about myself. Part of what we're called to do is live to help other people understand how to live for Christ. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on to love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." See, right here, we're being told that we are called to live in close connection with people, so closely that we are able to become the kind of people that can help other people live life abundantly. Unfortunately, in our culture, and it seeps right into our churches, in our culture, we have kind of misplaced real connection for kind of a fake sense of connection. We know so much information about people. If you're on social media in any context, you know a lot of information about people in your life. Or people, man, me and Crystal, we went to her 20th high school reunion a couple weeks ago, and it felt in a sense like we knew those people more than we actually do because we see them on social media, but you start talking with them and you're like, I don't know you. I haven't seen you in 20 years. We've misplaced fake connection and we're thinking that it's real connection. We need to be known by people, and we need to know people in such a way that we actually can help one another out in this life. I think Alcoholics Anonymous has it. They figured it out. You know, how do you help people keep from kind of going back into the rut of the habits and the choices that they've made in the past? You get other people around them. You get other people around them to where, man, they have something else to live for to the next week of, I want to make sure that I can tell those people that I've stayed sober. I want to help them to stay sober by me staying sober. We help each other. Here's what we need to realize. Every single one of us in this room are addicts. We are addicts to a thing called sin, to a thing called our personal nature that we just want to do what we want to do. I don't know if the drug addict is totally addicted to the drug itself or the feeling itself, and I don't know if we're totally addicted to sin itself, but we're addicted to the feeling that sin gives us. The bottom line is, even if 50 years ago you decided that you were going to live for Jesus, that you were going to follow the path that He wants for you, The truth is all of us are kind of sinaholics. We're recovering sinaholics. And the truth is we're not going to live this life the best way until we start to live it with other people in connection with us who are trying to live it the same way. Whether it's fear that's causing you to live in isolation or it's your desire to be comfortable, seclusion is not what God intends for any of us. It's not what He intends for you. It's not what He intends for your neighbor. We're not just supposed to know more information about people. We are called to know people well. And here's the thing. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, probably with 99.9% of people, we put up a facade. And that's not maybe the worst thing. You probably don't need to tell everybody our dark little secrets. But I was looking up the word facade when I was writing it down this week. I wanted to get the exact definition of it. It says, it is the face of a building, especially the principal front that looks onto the street. It's the face of a building. And it got me thinking about one of my favorite stations, HGTV. I love it because, I don't know about you, but I love to watch like home makeover stuff. It's fun watching like when something is just this awful thing and they make it in this beautiful home. And almost every one of those shows does the same thing. They bring the homeowners out in front of the house and they cover it up maybe with a picture of the old house, and then they pull it away so they can see the new facade. And what does everybody do? Everybody goes crazy, right? They're like, and I'm just waiting for the day where somebody just hates it and they can't hold it back and like, oh. And like that would be worth the price of whatever the show costs right there. But it doesn't happen because everybody loves that facade. But then I get to thinking, what if the homeowner goes up to that house and they open the door and they're loving the outside of the house and they open the door and nothing's been done? Like, it'd be really disheartening. But the truth is that's kind of how a lot of people live today. The facade, we work so hard on the facade of the house to make it look right on the outside. And on the inside, nothing's being done. And part of the reason nothing's being done is because we're not being real with people and allowing people into our life and letting people into their lives to where we help each other. Jesus has given us this thing called the body of Christ. And He said that there's people in that body of Christ who are there to help you with things that you need help with, and you're there to help them with things that they need help with. Do you have someone or a group of people that knows the real you and is able to challenge the real you to become a better you? Do you have a group of people, or just a person even, who you get to be that for them, to challenge them to be the best person that God has made them to be? If we don't have that, I think we're missing out. I think God is calling us, that's a part of what we're supposed to be going after. God wants us to be better together. My question for you is, are you willing to open the door this morning just a little bit? Open the door to something that to you right now might be a little bit uncomfortable. Are you willing to let God open the doors of your heart to something that you might need and you don't even know you need? To a relationship with a person or with a group of people that could help you and that in turn you could help as well. Why don't you take a minute and just pray with me for a second. Lord, I thank you that you bring people into our lives that we're meant to help and that are meant to help us. And God, I pray that right now you would work in our hearts as we talk for a couple more minutes about what it looks like to become people who get in connection with others. God, I pray that you open our hearts to where you want to take each of us as individuals and as groups of people. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So here's the deal. Our church, we really do believe in people connecting with other people. And I think that we do that pretty well, except one thing that our campus in Janesville has not been great at is small groups. And so I'm about to challenge each one of you to something new. If you've been around church for a while, you've seen maybe how small groups are done, and I think that this is going to look a little different than what you're used to in the past. But I want you to just take a quick look at this video, and then we'll continue.
There's a profound difference between living and merely existing. There's a great chasm between life with purpose and a life of just getting by. There's a sad truth that the world of soccer games and errands and meetings and dinner plans keep us from finding the kind of life that we were made for. What if you could spend 6 weeks creating space to take a deep breath and dig into what it means to do more than survive? What if you could make a decision right now to immerse yourself in the life that you were meant to live? Because you were never meant to live defeated. You were never meant to just get by. You were never meant to merely exist. You were always meant to thrive.
So in a few weeks, we're going to be starting a new series called Thrive. And some of you know, this summer, I think it was in July, our lead pastor, David, our campus pastor, Eric, and McChesney Park campus pastor, Corey, they all went out to South California to shoot some videos. And these videos were actually produced by some of the same people that produce stuff for Rick Warren's Saddleback Church, so it's this big production stuff. It's really good stuff. And they spent 2 full days recording this material for us. And what you're going to see in the back by Next Steps, we've got these books. They're these Thrive books. They're super well done. They're pictures of central stuff all over it. And during our Thrive series, for 6 weeks, we're challenging you to dig deep, to learn a little bit more what it means to thrive. And so, what I'm going to challenge you to today is to grab one of these books. But I'm not going to just challenge you to grab one of these books. I want to challenge you a little bit further beyond that. You see, we all have people in our lives that we know, that we love spending time with. Our challenge is for you to get people that are in your life to do this study with you. Now, it's not just a book. It's also, there's these videos to go along with it. You can get a DVD, but it's going to be right on our church website. This could be something where, man, you go and sit at soccer practice, your kid's soccer practice, and a couple other parents that you know well do it too, and maybe you're like, hey, you want to do this thing while we're sitting here? I don't know what it is. It could be anybody. It could be people in this church. It could be people not in this church. It could be family members who don't go to church. Whatever it is, that's what we're doing. We're asking you to do this a little differently than we've done small groups in the past. We're not asking you to sign up for a small group, and we're going to put you in with people that you don't know, and we're going to ask you to trust people and to talk about spiritual things that are deep and all that stuff. You have relationships. And we're challenging you to do this with the people that you know. The people that you, and it can be easy. It can be the person that's your best friend. It could be your spouse. We're also not saying that, we don't care if it's 15 people or one other person. I mean, I got kids in the youth group that I'm thinking about doing this with one-on-one even. But we really believe it's important for us to be connected with other people. And this is an incredibly awesome way for us to get connected. And so what we're going to do for the next, in about a minute here, I want you to take out, this is in your bulletin when you came in here. And if you don't have one, just kind of indicate it. We've got extra ones around. There's pens around. On the back side of it, it has a place for your name, for email, phone. How are you going to participate? Will you participate with a current group that you've got, or ask friends to participate with you? Now here's the really cool thing. You can fill this out, take it back to where the books are. You can purchase one of the books for yourself, but then you can also today, you can take as many of these as you want for a group of people that you want to get in a group with. You don't have to even pay for it. You could just indicate how many you took and then bring that money back at a different time. Or if they don't get in the group with you, you can bring the books back. We're okay with that. We want you to get involved with people. We want you to get involved with some small groups because this material, this Thrive material, it's great stuff, but it only will be best done if we don't do it alone. And so what I want you to do, we're going to put the music on. I want you to take 1 minute. I want you to fill this out. I'm going to fill it out too. And after we're done, I'll kind of lead us into where we're going to go from there. Just take, you'll have more time later. You can take it. For the next few weeks, we're going to be giving our church this challenge. This is something that we're asking you as a church. And this is church-wide, but Beloit, McChesney Park, us, we're all doing this. I'm asking you to do the spiritual work of thinking through and praying. If you don't have anybody in your head of who you'd want to do this with right now, think through it and pray through it. Because I think this could be something that's important for us. We're not called to be alone. Let's choose to go beyond just surviving and learn a little bit more what it means to thrive, and let's do it with someone else. I want you to pray with me, and we'll close up.